Hello, I'm Amalia Leguizamón. I'm an associate professor in sociology and Latin American studies at Tulane University. I teach courses on environmental sociology and the sustainable development of Latin America. In this module, we are going to explore how people relate to the environment in Central America from a sociological perspective. Our topic for today is bananas. But before we jump into it, let me ask you, what is the first image that comes to mind when I tell you people in interaction with the environment? When we think of people in relationship with the environment, we often conjure these images, right, of the great outdoors, of the pristine, these beautiful places where we go out for wonder, for rest, for relaxation. Thinking on the environment, for most, it also recalls exotic birds and animals, right, like all this fabulous biodiversity that we can find in highly biodiverse tropical areas like Central America. Of course, as we become more and more aware of the climate crisis, our images of people in interaction with the environment also look like this. The environment does not exist by itself. We people are constantly intervening in it. We extract the resources that we need for sustaining our everyday life, from extracting coal for energy, gas, oil for energy and plastics. We farm for food and for clothing. We build cities, right? So, and then we dispose. The earth and the ocean are our only dumping sites. Well, I guess you could say the space too now. Central America and in general the Latin American region has historically been a travel site because for centuries it has been the place where the rest of the world has gone to get the stuff they need, right? From silver and gold to sugar, coffee, bananas, soybeans. In this module, when we refer to people in interaction with the environment, our framework is going to be that of the political economy of the environment. That means that we're going to be exploring the power dynamics over the flows of materials that sustain life and its consequences on society and the environment. I'm looking forward to all your questions when I meet you. But for now, let's begin. Bananas. Bananas are an everyday staple in American diets. We purchase them in supermarkets for less than 50 cents a pound. Where do bananas come from? How do we grow them? And how are they so cheap? Bananas come originally from Southeast Asia. Archaeologists believe that people in Papua New Guinea were the first to domesticate bananas 8 to 10,000 years ago. Bananas arrived in the Americas with the Spanish in the early 1500s. They were first planted in the island of Hispaniola and then shipped into Mexico, and that's from where they entered Central America, where they are a common staple, right? But up until the 1850s, bananas were mostly grown and consumed in Central America and the Caribbean, and unknown in the United States. That changed at the end of the Civil War, when bananas began to be shipped into New Orleans and Boston. At this time, I'm talking the 1870s, bananas in the US are a total delicacy, right? An exotic tropical fruit that only a few could afford. That is going to change soon with mass production and mass importation of bananas into the United States. So let me introduce you to the four men that are going to change it all. Minor C. Keith, Lorenzo Baker, and Andrew Preston, and Sam Bananaman Semure. Minor Keith was a young entrepreneur from Brooklyn who began planting bananas in Costa Rica in the late 1870s. His business actually was the railroad. He managed to get a 99-year concession to build the first national railroad in Costa Rica. The railroad, however, wasn't as profitable, but the tracks ran over very, very fertile land. So Keith began planting bananas and using the railroad to get them to port, which is a pattern that we're going to keep seeing. Steamboats were the main means to transport bananas from Central America into the US. Lorenzo Baker was a schooner captain from Boston. Andrew Preston was also a Bostonian. Together, they set up Boston Fruit and began importing bananas from Central America and the Caribbean. Sam Semuri was a Russian immigrant in the United States who, in the 1890s, was peddling fruit in the port of Mobile, Alabama, and by 1910 controlled the banana trade, land, and politics in Honduras. This Ford established a number of companies that with time and through a series of mergers became first the United Fruit Company and later Chiquita, which I'm sure you recognize. I want to tell you in particular the story of Sam Semuri and the United Fruit, as, as told by John Soluri in his fabulous book, Banana Cultures, which we read in my class, the Sociology of Food and Agriculture. Like Soluri, I study soybeans in Argentina, but I have a similar, I follow this same theoretical framework, right? Like in trying to understand the socio-ecological transformations that result from the expansion from monocultures. Before I tell you about the monocultures, it's important that we know about the biology of bananas. Bananas are a parthenocarpic fruit, meaning they're a seedless fruit that propagates asexually. They produce fruit in the absence of fertilization. What does this mean? It means that after the stalk has flowered and borne fruit, it dies. But there are side shoots at the base of the main stalk, which can be removed and planted to continue the cultivar. So essentially, a banana farm is made up of identical plants. They are all clones. In Honduras, in the early 1900s, the main variety of banana grown for exportation was the Gros Michel. Now, the problem with monocultures is that they are very prone to disease. Panama sigatoka disease ran rampant in banana farms, even still today, where the main variety of bananas that we eat are Cavendish. So in order to control plant epidemics, fruit companies in the early 1900s first tried to they funded very expensive breeding companies to try to develop pest-resistant varieties. When those efforts failed, scientists resorted to chemical treatments, exposing workers to toxic agrochemical fumigations, and on last resort, on abandoning the infested farms and expanding the agrarian frontier. You can imagine the toll on workers and the environment of this type of agricultural enterprise. The expansion of banana monocultures in Honduras brought extensive social and environmental transformations. Fruit companies' engineers drained swamplands and cut down forests to make room for banana farms, removing natural plant communities and local hydrological systems. All this in name of bringing modernity and progress to the countryside. This is the ideology of the 19th century, right? Shared by political and economic elites as well, right? This ideology of progress and modernization, of taming nature with technology. And this is an ad from the United Fruit Company, right, that shows it, how through the advancement of these new technologies, through, as it says, by the miracle of the modern machinery, right, we're going to tame the jungle, to tame the wasteland and bring prosperity. A similar guiding myth, ideological narrative that we see here in the United States a bit earlier. Now, measuring productivity, this agricultural transformation was a success, right? Between 1915 and 1920, banana exports in Honduras grew from 1.2 million bunches to nearly 4.6 million. By 1930, almost 30 million bunches of bananas left Honduran shores, a volume combining the exports of Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama. So in terms of productivity and yields, massive success. All this was possible because the largest three fruit companies, Cuyamel, United, and Standard, had monopolized land and transportation routes, as well as the banana export farms. This is what we call vertical integration when we study commodity chains. And these pictures taken that are part of the rare archive collections here at the Latin American Library at Tulane University shows, I think, fabulously shows how this connection, right? Like the farms, the railroad tracks that go through the farms, and then we see the workers loading the trains, and then the trains go into port to the schooners that are going to ship these bananas into New Orleans and Boston. Now, the interesting thing, or like the important question from a sociological perspective, is how did these fruit companies amass so much political and economic influence? Well, first of all, by controlling capital-intensive large-scale agriculture, again, this in conjunction with local elites. Now, this is the interesting thing from a sociological perspective, right? Like how much power fruit companies had to be able to install and also remove civilian and authoritarian governments with the support of the US government, right? And we see this with the example of Manuel Bonilla in Honduras, who was put in power thanks to the funding and support and help, including his own vote by Sam Semuri, right? And the coup against Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala, who was trying to implement land reform, right? Like help banana workers in Guatemala, and the CIA helped bring in a coup against him. This, thanks to this relationship, thanks to the power that fruit companies had over government, they were able to gain concessions, right, to have control monopoly, so sole power over land, railroads, and port, right, like leading to this concentration that I spoke about earlier. Another way in which they kept maintain and reinforce their power, right, was building town companies, like we see here, for example, in Appalachia, in mine towns, right? Or in Argentina, we see them with soybeans, right? Like, no, actually, that's different. Because the way in which the banana farms work, and this still continues, right, is that the people the workers live on site, and they get paid with money that can only be used in the local stores, and so then the workers rely on their patrons, on their employees to get money, feed their children, send them to school, send them to hospital, right? And that creates an economic dependence that is very, very, very hard to get out because there are no options. And lastly, and this was particularly violent during across the 20th century, is as workers began to unionize and in order to challenge the power of the fruit companies, like there was a violent force, all kinds of violent events, including like full-blown massacres, like the massacre in Colombia in 1928 that Gabriel Garcia Marquez talks about in 100 Years of Solitude, right? Of the fruit companies crushing down all kind of unionization in the banana export farms. All right, so I hope that this was a brief introduction of some of the ideas or ways of thinking about society in relationship to the environment. What we're going to be doing next class is looking at the movements against the concentration of power in relationship to ownership and control of natural resources. Okay, I look forward to meeting you and your comments. Shoot me an email, and see you soon.